Good afternoon. I'm Amitabh from Marine Biological Lab at Woodsole, and I'll be talking about acquisition, processing, reprocessing using Micromanager. Just a show of hands, how many people are using Micromanager or are familiar with it? Okay. So just to give you a brief background on what our lab does, so we are using polarization to study different materials, biological samples, and our lab developed LC pulsescope technology, which is basically utilizing a liquid crystal to change the polarization of light and then seeing how birefringent material or birefringent samples kind of look. It's a neat technique because you do not require any staining for birefringent samples, and it's quite quantitative in nature. So I'll be talking about the software side, not about the technology, but just to give you a brief idea. So in this case, you're acquiring 4 different images, raw images. They're not quantitative itself by nature, so you have to actually process them to get some useful information out of it. So this is kind of the only technical slide you will see. So we are acquiring 4 different images. We are applying an algorithm to them, and then we are producing 2 computed images, which is retardation orientation, which is of interest. This we used to do using a software before Open Pulsescope, but it was limited to 1 camera, 1 kind of LC device. Then came Micromanager, made things easy for us, where we don't have to take care of the acquisition side, but we did have to kind of implement this framework where you could acquire N images, apply an algorithm, and produce Y images in a streamlined fashion so that you could do while you're doing your acquisition, your live acquisition. So, of course, the framework was first to support the lab needs because we are a small group, but we have the idea and concept that this is kind of a generalization where you have to acquire images, do some processing in a kind of streamlined fashion. So it's kind of a breakdown where you could do a ratiometric imaging where you're acquiring 2 images and producing a result. And basically what our framework does is add these computed channels to Micromanager where you don't have to acquire an image, spend camera time. So we kind of develop this framework where you have a mode plugin that tells you, I work with an LC device, I take 5 images, I produce 2 images, and that's kind of the basic idea. And that can be kind of applied to a variety of applications. And of course, we try to use most of Micromanager stuff. So Micromanager works with groups and presets. So if an LC device is being used, it has to kind of figure out a way to generate a group, populate the presets. But you can also use a device like a filter wheel. So in a polarized fluorescence technique, we use a filter wheel to basically do the same thing what an LC does. So the mode plugin for polarized fluorescence basically is saying, I can work with an LC, but I can also work with a filter wheel device. And then the framework takes care of all the other aspects because they don't change. And of course, we are trying to leverage most of ImageJ things like macros, macro extensions, and also provide pipelines to, say, if you wanted to do the processing in MATLAB, to kind of send the data to MATLAB using MATLAB control library, and then get the data back. So, kind of just to give you an idea, which I've already spoken to you about, so mode plugin is kind of taking care of most of the things for setting up the framework, how it's supposed to behave and how it's supposed to acquire, and then it's providing that extra interaction layer between Micromanager and ImageJ. And we add some more custom functions using extensions so that accessing metadata information and even setting up some of the basic controls are kind of easy using even ImageJ macro language. So that's kind of the basic idea where you have one interface for the acquisition stream and one is for the reprocessing stream. And reprocessing is basically you're opening up a data set, Micromanager data set, and then it's running the same kind of a pipeline, same kind of processing needs that might be skipped maybe in the acquisition stream because it's probably processing heavy, but then you can apply when you're doing reprocessing. And then all the things that you're developing, you only develop once because both the pipelines kind of use the same interface. So this is a neat do-it-yourself open pole scope I was talking about, where you're using a filter wheel and you can have linear polarizers arranged in your filter wheel cube with the set orientations, and the processing part is being kind of taken care by the framework because it's the same. And then the filter wheel is just saying, I'm replacing the functions of the LC, and these are the presets that you need to acquire the image. And then we also take control of the Micromanager data viewer and add some additional controls for visualization based on, again, the mode plugin needs. So this is a neat mode plugin which says, I don't need a device, I'm just a macro processor. So any image stream that is coming through, I will do some processing on it. In this case, we are basically using macro extensions to kind of get into the Micromanager metadata information and putting it out. Probably you can do some kind of intelligent acquisition based on that. Just script it and have your acquisition run based on that. So the Open Pole Scope software also has some additional plugins which we were developed for our needs, but probably it's also they will be useful for the community. One was an image navigator that kind of, if you have a number of data sets, especially Micromanager, where you have the images inside them and you want to kind of get a quick overview of what you have in them with the meta information, it'll kind of populate. Another is the top frame, where you have, if you have too many kind of GUIs, you can add your own controls which you use regularly, and they will be always kind of visible on the desktop. And of course, we have a frame averager. For our needs, frame averaging was kind of critical, and that's kind of also part of the software suite. All right, that's our kind of core group, and we have a smaller core of developers. That's Grant and me, who have done most of the developing. And if you have any questions,